Is America a uniquely flawed nation, or is there a totally different way to measure its place in history? Today, we're jumping into a really thought-provoking article that kind of steps away from all the usual debates. It uses a data-driven approach to weigh America's sins against what it calls the true monsters of the past. And honestly, the results might just surprise you. You know, this whole debate got supercharged recently, especially around Ken Burns' documentary on the American Revolution. It really brought up a critical question. Does looking at the unvarnished, often really ugly truth of our history just serve to tear a nation down? Or is it the only way we can ever truly understand ourselves? Well, the article we're exploring today suggests maybe we should move beyond these purely emotional arguments. It proposes this new framework, something it calls a calculus of civilization. Basically, a way to judge nations not just by their worst sins, but by their total net impact on the world. So, how in the world does this calculus of civilization actually work? Well, the article lays out a pretty specific set of criteria to try and measure the difference between a country that's truly great and one that, well, belongs in the category of the absolute worst in history. Okay, so here are the 10 criteria the article puts on the table for greatness. You've got some familiar ones like rule of law, but also some more unique ideas like the Cincinnati Standard. That's all about leaders who willingly give up power. For this analysis, though, two are absolutely crucial. First, life-saving innovation, which adds to human potential, and second, the polar opposite of a really terrifying concept called democide. So what exactly is democide? It's a term coined by the political scientist R.J. Rummel, and its definition is brutally simple: the murder of any person or people by their own government. This concept is the absolute cornerstone of the article's argument for how we identify history's most monstrous regimes. All right, let's see how this framework gets applied to actual history. The core idea here is that if you're going to judge the past fairly, you have to see the world as it was, not as we wish it had been. Take a look at this. This is data from the American Revolution. The bar on the left, that's combat deaths. The one on the right, deaths from disease. For every single soldier killed by a bullet, almost 3 were killed by sickness. The article uses this to make a really powerful point. Back in 1776, the biggest enemy for humanity wasn't another army. It was nature itself. And from there, the article makes another huge point about context. Things we rightly see as horrific today, like conquest and slavery, well, for millennia, they were the historical norm. This was true across pretty much every culture on Earth. The argument isn't to excuse these atrocities, not at all, but to frame them as a tragic, universal part of human history, not some uniquely American flow. And this slide right here, this is the core of the article's counter-narrative. It argues that what made Western civilization unique wasn't that it participated in slavery, but that it was the first civilization to ever mount a global moral campaign to abolish it, a movement that was really spearheaded by Great Britain and the American North. You know, this quote from John Adams just captures that mindset perfectly. The founders, as the article describes it, saw their job as laying a really difficult, even brutal foundation. They were stuck dealing with the messy realities of politics and war, so that future generations could have the freedom to study mathematics and philosophy, to build a better, more enlightened society on top of what they started. And that brings us to the real heart of the argument. This is where that calculus of civilization gets put to the test. Now we're going to see the data that directly compares history's greatest monsters with its greatest miracles. Just look at that number, 262 million. According to R.J. Rummel's research, that is the estimated number of people murdered by their own governments just in the 20th century. That is democide. And that number? That establishes the scale of true evil. It's the benchmark for what a monstrous state really looks like. So, this leads to the article's simple but really powerful equation. The worst countries are the ones that subtract from the human story through democide. Think Nazi Germany, the Khmer Rouge. The great countries, on the other hand, are the ones that add to human potential through life-saving innovation. And here is the other side of that equation. Over 1 billion. That's the estimated number of lives added to the human story saved by the Green Revolution, an agricultural technology boom led by an American scientist named Norman Borlaug. The contrast is just staggering, right? Subtracting 262 million lives versus adding over 1 billion. So, where does this whole calculus leave us now? Well, the article argues that this historical framework is essential for our future because the very test of national greatness is shifting. We are now facing brand new existential challenges. And yeah, artificial intelligence is right at the top of that list. The article frames the huge challenges of the 21st century as the HEF problem: health, energy, and food. And the argument is pretty simple. The nation that leads the world in solving these massive issues, most likely by using AI, will be the one to earn the title of greatest for our century. But with a technology as powerful as AI, the stakes are, well, they're potentially infinite. The article boils it all down to this one simple equation: P of boom versus P of doom. The probability that AI leads to a golden age of abundance versus the probability that it leads to our extinction. Whichever nation manages to tip that scale is going to define the future for all of us. And to really emphasize this choice, the article brings in this incredibly powerful quote from President Eisenhower. He's talking about the immense opportunity cost of conflict, that every gun that's made, every warship launched is, in a very real sense, a theft from those who are hungry and are not fed. It's just a stark reminder of what we sacrifice when we choose conflict over progress. And that same perspective gets amplified by Carl Sagan's famous pale blue dot monologue. I mean, think about it. All of our history's wars and conquests, all of it fought for temporary control over a tiny fraction of a single pixel in a photograph. It puts all human conflict into this deeply humbling cosmic context. And all of this, it all leads to the article's final, chilling conclusion. The ultimate evil, the one act that would eclipse every single other atrocity in history, is reserved for whatever nation causes human extinction, whether that's through a nuclear war, a bioengineered pandemic, or a misaligned superintelligent AI. So, the article leaves us with this one final thought. Debating the past is important for sure, but the future is where the ultimate judgment of our civilization will actually be made. The title Worst Country in History is, terrifyingly, still up for grabs. So the most important question now is, who will avoid earning it?